I want to very quickly talk a little bit about the design process and the scope of the project. And then at the last public hearing, there were some questions asked regarding costs to provide some further explanation, and so I'd like to be able to do that. And then Andre will follow me to talk very briefly because there were questions asked about managing contingency funds and how our costs will be managed as we continue on through the design process. And so Andre can speak to that from all of his experience from that perspective. So in terms of the design process, we have arrived at the design today after forming a team that has lots of experience designing and building town libraries throughout the state of New Hampshire. They've designed and built very well thought out libraries of similar sizes and scope to ours. They've designed and built LEED certified buildings, and they are responsive to the community that they work in, and they pay close attention to the priorities of each community. In the process that we have gone through, we have visited numerous new public libraries built across the state, and there have been about 20 new libraries built across the state of New Hampshire in the past decade or so. We haven't visited all of those, but we've visited many of them. And we've seen different approaches to the workings of each of these libraries, and it's really helped us because we've been able to select the elements and ideas that we think are best suited to Durham, to the site and to the existing building that we're working with. In our process, we started, as Tom said, with a building program that was developed with a library consultant, and we've chosen to reduce the size of our design to something less than that stated building program to help keep the cost of this down. But we've done this very carefully so as not to compromise the long-term effectiveness of the building once it's completed. And so the way that we have approached this is by taking a little bit out of various spaces and reduced the amount of seating space a little bit from what our goals were. But the important thing is that, as Tom said, this is really a people space building is what we are creating. The design process culminated in March of this past year when we did a cost estimate that was provided by our design build team. And this is broken down by building systems. And it is based on their very extensive experience on public projects throughout the state of New Hampshire. The construction cost estimate is the basis for the project budget that we have put together that was submitted as part of this year's Town Capital Improvement Plan. So let me very quickly talk about the scope and the design, and actually Tom did a great job of this, so I'm really going to fly through this very quickly here. But contemporary libraries are lively places that serve all ages all year round, that have a variety of spaces, and I think that's a key piece. We have one space today. This will have a variety of spaces for different types of activities that make it a real center for the community. There'll be spaces for quiet reading or for working. Oops, oh dear. Sorry. There'll be spaces for noisy and messy activities. There will be spaces for individuals and for groups. And then there'll be spaces for large groups of the community, for groups from 14 to 100 people. And that's really a critical piece here for what we're doing. There's going to be spaces for socializing over a cup of coffee, spaces for toddlers and parents, teenagers who want their own territory. And that's really what's really important about this, is to be able to accommodate a wide range of needs that really are going to serve the entire community. And so this is the first floor plan that as you would walk into the building, coming into a main lobby, that the central adult area with the circulation desk and all of the staff space here, as you would walk through the book stacks into the children's area, a place for toddlers and their parents to be able to sit and read picture books, places for those messy, noisy activities that are so important in terms of our children's programming, and then a place for teenagers that's really sort of their own territory right here. So all of these various pieces, and then as Tom had described, the house will be reused as a reading cafe and a heritage room. Really reusing those spaces in ways that are going to be so appropriate and wonderful social spaces. And then the second floor of the building will have that large community space that can serve up to 100 people or 60 people in one side and a conference room on the other side. And so again, this is 2/3 of this space will be for people. And so this is why we're doing this and why 10,500 square feet is not excessive. Our town master plan envisions that the library is a critical component of the town center. And the location that we've chosen between several family neighborhoods, the downtown and the middle school, is really going to be a hub of activity. We will have more patron visits, we'll have more program activities, and this is going to bring more people not only to the library but to downtown more frequently. Some states have done some calculations. Vermont and South Carolina are a couple of examples to be able to show the direct and indirect economic impact of public libraries. And I shared this information at a recent Economic Development Committee meeting. And so we've seen it sort of done, calculated on a statewide basis. Tom and I have looked to try and see if there's ways to be able to do it on a local basis. We haven't found any good ways to be able to do that. But there's no doubt that the library will play a role in the overall economic vitality of our town. So that brings us to the cost. And it's important for us first to talk about the cost of the project, that is the construction cost. And the way that this project budget is formed is that we want to make sure that we've included everything that it takes to create this permanent home for the public library. So the cost of the real estate, the cost of design, the cost of construction, the furniture, the equipment, moving, and contingency funds. And so as we think about all those various pieces and total it all up, it comes to $4.8 million is the total project budget. Of that, the actual construction pieces are these first two pieces up here at the top, about $3.2 million. But all of these other pieces of it here play an important part and are part of what we need to be planning for and anticipating. It's also important for us to understand a little bit of the history of how we got to this number. Before we had our design build team on board and before we had begun our design process, when we had first acquired the property in the summer of 2010, we made an initial estimate of what we thought this project would be, and we calculated that the project budget at that time was $4.3 million. And of that, we saw that $2.7 million would be funded through a bond, and the rest would be through funds acquired by the library, $1.6 million. After we had completed our design process in March of 2011 and understood more specifically what the cost of this specific project were going to be, that cost had increased from 4.3 to 4.8 million. The library trustees at that time chose to increase the amount of fundraising in order to be able to cover that difference, rather than to try and expect that any more would be done on the side of the bond. And so at that point in time, we made a commitment to raise at least $900,000. This went in addition to the 1.2 million that we already had received prior to that, so that we would have at least $2.1 million of non-taxpayer money that would go towards this project. So today, in February now, as Tom had said, we have exceeded our goal in fundraising. We have raised over $1 million, and that has helped to already reduce the cost of the bond down to no more than 2.6. And again, we expect it to be lower than that. We've got at least another 50,000 here at this point. And so we've certainly been talking over the past few months or even the past year about what the total cost of this would be and how people should think about the overall cost of this project. Many questions have been asked, some excellent questions. We have turned to the town business office and to Gail Jablonski to help us in how we present this information and to make sure it's done in a way that is familiar to the council, as well as making it as transparent as possible for the entire community. It is important that we understand different scenarios, and Tom talked about that in terms of operating hours. And it isn't that we're trying to confuse people. That's the last thing we want to do. We simply want to be able to say, here's some different ways for us to be able to think about it. But all of these numbers now are based on a project budget that would have a bond, a 20-year bond at 4.25%. And that's not a fixed guarantee here at this point, but that is the most current information available, and so that's why we are using those numbers for where we are today. And so the sheets that all the counselors have and that I believe are available to others that show the different scenarios, when we compare the total annual operating cost, that is the operational budget plus the cost of the bond, and we look at it for anywhere from 38 to 51 hours, that the total increase in the cost of operating the library is somewhere between $250,000 and $275,000 per year, and that's looking out to 2014. And again, I want to stress that includes the cost of the bond as well as the small amount of additional operating money. And so the question has been asked, what is this in terms of the town budget? That's approximately a 4% increase in terms of the town budget. For the taxpayers, sorry. There we go. For the taxpayers, you're just going to have to trust me. Well, the slide isn't there, but the numbers are on the sheet. So is that it is roughly a 1% increase in terms of the tax rate. All right. And again, that's including the cost of the bond as well as the additional operating cost. And so another way to think about it is that our current operating budget for the library is about 1% of the tax rate, and that this additional cost will be another 1%. All right. So in total, the cost of the library would be about 2% of the tax rate. This is exactly what that says there. Sorry. Also, I think it's important to be thinking about this building as a capital investment and not an expense. We get an incredible asset when we are done with this that will be here for many, many years. And that means that we need to be thoughtful about the quality of this investment and not just concerned about the initial cost. It needs to be sustainable in every sense of that term, in terms of being sustainable financially, operationally, and in all aspects. And it's important that as we make all of these decisions now, we have to recognize we're going to live with them for a long time. And many of these decisions cannot be undone, or they're very expensive to change later on once the construction is complete. So we need to be very careful about potential financial and operational impacts of anything that we do. And really one of the things, again, because of the success of our fundraising, is that this is coming at a great discount to the taxpayers. That we get a building asset for about half the price of what it is worth because of that fundraising effort. There's no question that this is an investment that is going to be fostering a sense of community. That is, as Tom described so well, really one of the purposes of what we're trying to do. For every citizen who uses it, there will be a payback without a doubt. And lastly, in terms of the urgency for doing this, we have to recognize that if we delay, if we postpone, we will lose value. Construction costs are extremely favorable now, and all of the forecasts are that there will be significant increase in the next 12 to 18 months. Borrowing rates are also incredibly low, and so we're going to get the very best value for our money if we go forward now. Pushing it off, waiting, will simply mean that we will get less for our money.